You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports Network.
Let's get back to strolling instead of scrolling. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your fam.
Some carriers will give you just one measly entertainment subscription. One is no fun. With Verizon, there's up to 7 entertainment subscriptions with your unlimited plan. That's 7 times the... 7 times the... No. 7 times the... Music, gaming, Disney+, Hulu, ESPN+, and more. That's 7 times the entertainment!
Because everyone deserves better.
And with plans starting at just $35, better costs less than you think.
If you think all pads are exactly the same, think again. This is Always Ultra Thins reinvented with the Always Triple Protection System. This pad wicks gushes 90% faster, absorbs even more so you can feel dry, and locks odors in. Rethink your pad for up to 100% leak-free and odor-free comfort with the totally reinvented Always Ultra Thins. This is always like never before.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
At Tyson, we know taste is local. Some like their beef pit smoked, their chicken spiced all the way up, or their pork sweet and saucy. Local flavors, global impact. That's what feeding the world is all about.
This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN Sports Wrap, Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won. I hope my team they won. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with this hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. As you see, both Mike Washington and Charles Bishop are out on assignment. So we're going to go off the radar a little bit and go to the visiting professors and the HBCU sports football analysts, if you would, with Joshua Sims Sr., BJ Jones, and then we have old clinical professor,
You said
A.D.
political?
Jr., he's always getting it done. And when I say, I mean that in the metaphorical sense that he has a lot of assignments over the years. So he's just the old guy that comes in here and brings it to you all the time because he's been with the system for a while. So we just expect that he's going to be here and do it right. So just letting people know. And I say that a little bit because I want to get into this commentary a little bit between what I refer to when you look at the African Studies methodology in terms of the social structure and the governance structure. So I wanted to start this out and be quite open. I had an article that I got a chance to give a quote to out of NBC, which obviously I see as the governance structure, just like ABC, ESPN, CBS, Fox, whatever you want to call it. Those are part of the social structures. What we see, some of those folks that are involved at HBCU, what is HBCU sports, HBCU game day, this right here inside the HBCU sports lab, BJ Jones with his HBCU Twitter spaces that he does on Tuesday, June. The Wednesday, HBCU nightly, if I understand, it's moving to Saturday, to Joshua Sims and the cadre of gentlemen that work with them on that. In a lot of ways, that's what you call, or what I would call, the governance structure. Who are we to each other versus social structure? What do people think of us in this greater framework that we live in the United States, and some people say even America? I mean, even across the world in terms of what that looks like. So I wanted to frame this in that frame because the title concerned me, to be frank with you, as Deion Sanders' quote, sellout. Experts say it's complicated, which is certainly what I said. And other folks, HBCU Pro Football Hall of Famers' loyalty intentions were called into question when he traded an HBCU for a better funded. They use predominantly, I use historically, because that's another construct that they use that provides a different layer that allows, as if historically white institutions has changed, and it doesn't give any historical context, that they were found as historically white institutions for, at that time, mostly white men, later women, and then finally as they open up inclusion. While you have historically black colleges which were founded for black folks, but they never were discriminatory. Anybody could came to these institutions, and they had. So it's a different framework when you look at who we are to each other versus how other folks see us. And I'll see that reframe again. And so when you talk about that, I want to go back and give y'all some insight just to let you know how this works. So if you would, Drew, pull up the first email. It's a little small, so hopefully I get a chance to kind of read it to individuals so they can see it in terms of what that looks like, in case it's smaller than I would desire. But I wanted to show you because that's exactly where it came from. This is Char Adams, and she worked and writes, obviously, for NBC News. And so she's a columnist, journalist, if you would. So she said, hello, my name is Char Adams, and I'm a reporter for NBC News. I'm writing an article about Deion Sanders and the reaction to his leaving Jackson State for Colorado. I would love to speak with you about the reaction largely from Black social media users and why you believe Black people are describing Sanders' departure as abandoning an HBCU. Would you be willing to speak with me in a brief phone interview today? I'd love to highlight your expertise in my story. So obviously I was quoted in here and I got a chance to do that. If you're in the academy and you one of the things that you do in there is you write journal articles, books, book chapters. Those are things that you're responsible for tenure and to continue to weight and increase the value of the institution in this social norm structure, which means writing grants. And among your lectures, which I like to say, as you get good with that, you become an expert teacher in a lot of ways. And one of the last things we are responsible for is engaging with the institution in terms of service. And sometimes they can be outside of the university, depending on what that looks like, right? So notice the term she used, the governance structure. She said banding. But I guarantee you the individual and she happens to be African American woman in terms of that she does, she and her, she puts out the EDMs out there to be recognized in that. And that's why I use that framework, because she put it out there from that perspective. But I would hesitate and I would question, I wonder who is the editor? What does the editor look like? Because it was purposely chosen to use in the title of the article, sellout. And if you look at anybody's quotes in there, they don't use that terminology. Only in the first paragraph before you get into quotes is it used. So I'm sure that was something that was done by the editor. She didn't even do that. So I want to clear her up. So I want to make it clear that we need to be understanding oftentimes there's tools that are used in this social structure that creates an environment where we argue with each other about things that we are having. And I'm saying this is an important conversation in regards to who we are to each other. So we can have this conversation with Coach Prime, Coach Dion, our expectations. We can have this conversation with Shaw Adams in terms of who we are to each other. We can have it. That's a governance structure. We have the right to have that conversation. But oftentimes you have other folks that don't quite understand that, and they use and see the world how they see it through a social lens, and they bring a whole different framework to it. And that's where you get a lot of confusion, and you see folks that are having these different degrees of framing. Because in the social structure, it's about individual growth, individual framework, right? Versus in the governance structure, it tends to be more about who we are to each other. Self-empowerment, right? What does it mean in terms of institutional frame? So I really wanted to make sure we did that. One thing I'll leave you with, and again, if you want to get a little more information on what this looked like, obviously you can read the article and my quotes. If you would, Drew, pull up my quote that was out there. And I got a chance. She asked 15 minutes. I spoke for 45, and I went into the social structure and governance structure. But she touched on the quote I had put in there, which is, as you all know, professor of health, kinesiology, and sports studies, specializing in HBCU sports at Texas University, said focuses solely on the financial incentives and upward mobility of Sanders' new job ignores the social identity. And I also talked about social separation, anxiety theory, those kind of theories are brought in there. I use fan engagement theory as well. But this gets to the bottom of it when you just say social identity. Of sports, as much as college football is a business and money driver, there's a cultural significance to the programs that manifests itself in life loyalty to teams, students, colleges, and choice. Quote, people are fighting two competing frameworks, end quote, Cavil, the co-editor of the Athletic Experience and Historic Black Colleges, University, Past, Present, and Persistence. Obviously, y'all are quite aware of the book. And so with that said, I just thought it was contextual to make sure that you got an understanding of where all this is going. The last thing I will leave you with before I bring these gentlemen in, they can give some thoughts on this if like, but we're really going to allow them to get into the football context where they are, where they thrive and stuff like that, because that's where the expertise is. And obviously they're free in this governance structure to give their opinions or whatever part of that. But I didn't want to spend a great deal on that. I wanted to take that onus on myself for this process, because that's where I've been groomed. That's where I lay out. The last thing that you might want to get a chance to check out is if you go to Twitter, Hip Hop Prez, that previously was the president of Dillard. And now he is continuing to do some work on that level. He actually put out a tweet. I would agree and encourage others as well, as particularly those that are engaging in the Coach Prime debate, to listen to Brother Karen Hunter from this day forward, which is my return to his statement. Said I would agree and encourage others, as he put out there in terms of his text, that I thought was important in terms of Dr. Walter Kimbrough. I would encourage everyone engaged in the primetime debate to listen to at African Carr, that's his Twitter handle, and at Karen Hunter. We call him Dr. Carr and Professor Hunter for those that engage with them. From today, Brother Carr is adding a nuance that most of us are missing brilliantly. And he's referring to a YouTube video that is called In Class with Carr. If you get a chance, we'll put it out there in some spaces and pull it up. You can go check out that video. He says this is part 2 of a 3-part series. He'll talk about the Celebration Bowl, my understanding, next Saturday as it gets going. But he's talked about this the last 2 weeks. So if you get a chance to listen to that, you'll really get an in-depth knowledge, something that we don't have time to do on this show because it's really more about the sports. So with that being said, as we engage and get back into the sporting context, I thought that was important to put that on the table. This is the video that you see here where they start this dialogue. Brilliant folks that are in the space about who we are to each other. They like to use the frame. What is the decision? What is this? What does it do to free us in that space? So those that understand it and buying that can see that. With that being said, do you all have any additional thoughts that y'all want to share at this time? I'll go with you, Joshua, if you want to get into it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a kind of start it and just lay here. I'm gonna be quick on this. As you've seen, as everybody's seen through HBCU Nightly, we've had a lot of these conversations. I often refer to Dr. Cavil as the general. He knows this, and that is a sign of respect that I have for the work that he's done in this community and inside of this side of the framework and everything he's done on both sides, man. One of the few gentlemen who's had the ability to kind of ebb and flow between both sides of the contextual societal structures. And so I often refer to him as one of the generals. And one of the things that he brought to the forefront in HBCU Nightly 2 weeks ago was last week actually, was that we have to be careful about how we view and how we depict someone else's views. We were using the contextual idea of religious views, as we refer to it. It's a kind of an inside joke amongst the HBCU community about God and the consistency of Coach Prime's perspective as it pertains to God. But he made a very poignant statement and made me go back and start writing last week about the importance of understanding perspective and how perspective can change and look. So I essentially landed my plane, this week on one centralized idea. And I do plan to do some more writing on this, but, and kind of gather some information and some data as it pertains to this statement that I'm about to make. And then, I'm going to pass it. But I am of the clear understanding that no institutions, businesses, corporations have done more for the Black community than the historically Black college and university. I was poised with a question about Dr. King as it pertains to if Dr. King was made via the HBCU or made via the Black church. And I want to make sure that people understand that I'm not doing, a comparative analysis between what's happened between the Black church and the institution that is the Black church. And historical,
because that's a social construct that wants.
That's a social construct. Exactly. They serve two totally different purposes, but they're complementary to each other. So exactly. And so I've landed my plane on being able to make sure that people in the context of this conversation, it has allowed for me to be able to do something that I've always wanted to do. And that is highlight the impact that historically Black colleges and universities have had on our community, both in large and small effect. And so where I've kind of now turned my focus away from the Coach Prime component of this and Deion Sanders component of this, and I've now turned my focus completely to making sure that people understand the impact that historically Black colleges and universities have had, and in a lot of ways led by the general, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, who's welcomed me into this, but also by people like my grandparents, like my parents, who all went to North Carolina Central. My wife's parents, my wife's aunts and uncles and things like that, who all went to North Carolina Central. And this is all we know. So for those of you who are detractors, who may not understand the impact of HBCUs, who may not understand why components of and pockets of our community are so You would say emotional. I would say passionate. I would say just understand that we understand the impact that historically Black colleges and universities have had, our greatness that we've sustained over the years, and why it's important for us to be able to put ourselves back on at the pinnacle of our community's impact, and wanting to see our student athletes that look like us come to our universities. And that's a larger conversation, I understand and recognize, but I will not come off of the stage that HBCUs have had the largest impact on the African-American community in this country. And these are the longest lasting businesses that our people have created. And, I'll support that with some data and some information as time goes by. But in the meantime, that is where I'm landing on this conversation. And I am I have a direct perspective as it pertains to that. My family would not be in the position that it is today had it not been for the HBCU. So that's where I am on that.
Ooh, important context. And you have done that work on Twitter. As much as BJ Jones, as I've seen him correct folks that just kind of fly off the handle and make a comment. Yeah. And there's some folks out there that will check you in terms of your accuracy, not because they're emotional. They just check you because of your accuracy, and they'll put it in a line, maybe a sentence. If you're lucky, maybe two. Sometimes it's one word. I was like, wow, I love it. So coming to you, BJ Jones, because you're one of those architects that have done that extremely well. What are your thoughts in terms of what I opened the show with?
I think the biggest thing that we've seen really over the last week is that a lot of the people who have seemed to have reveled in the idea and the thought that the HBCUs were broken down a peg look like us. That's the most troubling and disturbing thing that I've gotten out of this last week. And also, with the internet comes a great responsibility. The internet, we've been able to inform people. We've been able to inform the masses very quickly, much quickly than back in the day when we had the daily news and the town newspaper. And it's
weekly
amazing.
News, more likely.
Right.
Black newspapers.
Yeah. But it's amazing how an opinion and a picture, we put those together and create what we call a meme. Meme can go viral, can override the statements of a university as well as print media. So it's been amazing to be able to watch that and kind of see where we are. And then a lot of people who I said, they don't understand nuance. They don't understand deductive reasoning and things that you would expect college educated people to understand. Every argument is not a this or that. A lot of it is a this and that. And it's amazing that people don't understand that. So I think just this entire week just has been, it's been interesting. Haven't seen a lot of Jackson State people, contrary to what people believe, that have been very upset. They've been, more like, hey, water off of a duck's butt than most other people, right?
Right.
But it's amazing how in these narratives get created, and it doesn't matter if the narrative is correct, if it's sustained by fact. If the narrative out there, we're just going to keep running with it because that's the narrative.
With that being said, AD Drew, as we close on this, did you want any final thoughts on this, or are you ready to go to the break?
No, I got to get a piece of this also, Dr. Cavil.
I didn't want to force anybody.
And BJ, you know why people like that and it different? It's this long thing that I learned a long time ago. Perception is reality. I'm pretty sure it's bright and sunny where each and every one of us is. But if I told you it was pitch black, dark, and snowing outside, and you believe that in your mind, there's nothing that I can humanly do to convince you that it's not pitch black, snowing, and cold outside. I'm sorry. That's just the type of people that we are. Here's the problem, BJ. There are two different cultures. there's Black culture, and then there's HBCU culture. Just because you Black does not mean that you understand HBCU culture. I have many of African-American friends who've gone, some of them gone to historically white colleges, some of them didn't go to college. But if you have never embraced yourself with the HBCU culture and understand and recognize that HBCU culture, there are just certain things that you cannot truly feel. Now, the four of us have had the pleasure of embracing and living the HBCU culture in our all respective institutions. Dr. Cavil as an undergrad student at Prairie View, you as an undergrad at Southern, Joshua as an undergrad at Central, and myself as an undergrad at Florida A&M. And you know, the one thing that all four of our schools probably have in common, I'm not going to say probably, they do have in common. Our institutions were started with both hands behind their back. For those of us who went to a public institution, we got the worst draw when it came to the location of our school. You tell me any public institution that's an HBCU that is not either across the railroad tracks, by the graveyard, in the valley or swamp, or up on the hill. You name one. We got the worst real estate. We wanted to get y'all Negroes up out of town and get y'all the worst land. That's what happened back in the late 1800s and 1900s in that post-construction era. It's either that or your institution was started by a church who wanted to help educate the African-American students. And, you know, the funding for churches or low. So with that, we started with both our hands behind our back. We have come a long way, and we are living in a social experiment. We are now getting ready to begin phase 3 of that social experiment. Phase 1 was pre-prime. Phase 2 was just 3 years that we had prime at Jackson State. Now we're beginning phase 3 of that social experiment. So in about 2025, there's going to be some master's student or doctoral student who will be able to put together an equation and write a great thesis or dissertation based on a full evaluation of the prime effect.
And I might know who should do that. Charles Bishop, as he is in the doctoral program. So great way to close. Does anybody that has the ability to navigate this space and do it quite like anybody else, because he is of the governance structure in more ways than we can examine versus somebody doing it from outside in terms of the social structure. With that, get back. We'll be right back after this quick break and get into the football context and really give you some information about this Celebration Bowl. Somebody's going to get a t-shirt that says Champion 2022. We'll see what that looks like on Saturday, because this becomes about us. We're going to break down and give you some insights of the players, coaches, and see what these gentlemen really think in terms of this matchup. We're going to take you inside quite like you've never seen before. Stickers will be right back after this quick break.
Support the Black College Sports Network so we can continue to provide you coverage. Go to myjbn.com/support and be a part of the Black College Sports Network.
They can follow their dreams. Let's get back to getting ticks instead of watching flicks. Before we can safely get out there, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines. Visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your crew.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft. Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more. But it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll it back,
back, everybody.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon. So now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language. And she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil inside the HBCU Sports Lab. I want to go ahead and give this to you. As you've heard our monologue, I didn't get a chance to welcome everybody. Welcome to episode 342 inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from the NEIA to the NCAA. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture. From NEIA to NCAA, as we say, we share that insight from the information of HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic program in the business of HBCU sports. We simply call it the HBCU sports pedagogy. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. I did tell you both gentlemen are on assignment, and we're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to KCH 1230 AM studios with Texas Radio Hall of Fame, multi-Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper in the beautiful home, Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. As I did, I gave you the introduction as we have Joshua Simpson, DJ Jones, and A.D. Drew. Kind of gave you opening monologue. Now we'll get into the sports, but I did want to take a quick break. And we'll come right back on the other side and really take a deep dive, because I want to get into the All-American players, the numbers from particularly North Carolina Central and Jackson State, and ask these guys a little bit as we get deeper. We talked in the previous week about the quarterback. We even talked about defensive back and the linebacker in terms of defensive player of the year. I want to get into some of this offensive line play, this defensive line play, where these guys will surely tell you the game is going to be won. And many of you all know this. So I want to get into that exercise and that minutia in that level of detail. To stick with us, we'll be right back after this quick break.
Your ad could be ran here. MyJBN.com/support. MyJBN.com/support for more information.
The new GMC Sierra with hands-free driving offers the most advanced and luxurious pickup in its class. Yeah, it rocks.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. dandruff protection that's never not working. Head and Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, yeah, and who the ball, So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Ville inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. As you know, they're out on assignment, so we have the football gurus and the clinical professors. As we have these adjunct professors in here getting it done. Joshua Sims Sr., BJ Jones, AD Drew. As we look for this huge matchup, I mean, I'm really excited about this matchup. I'm not sure if we've had a matchup that is so synergistic in terms of clearly what will be the best two teams this year in HBCU football in terms of coming in this game that happen to win their conference champions. When we talk about the 9-2 North Carolina Central Eagles and the 12-0 Jackson State Tigers sitting at 2-1 respectively. But let's get into it. We've talked about the quarterbacks, and we'll do that in the last segment. But I want to get into these guys that were on the first team and second team. For the MEAC, talking about the quarterback, Davis Richards, as you would imagine, as he was player of the year, a junior, Belgrade, Florida. He was a first-team player representing North Carolina. Then you go to the running back, Latrell Collier, North Carolina Central. He's out of Bluefield, West Virginia. Redshirt junior. Center, Caroselli Simpkins III. Sophomore, Charlotte, North Carolina. Offensive lineman, Corey Bullock, junior, North Carolina Central. Out of Maryland. Do you know where that city is? How to pronounce that?
I have no idea how to pronounce it. And they probably done joked on this kid all year long about where he's from. Not knowing how to pronounce it.
I think it's a Accokeek, Accokeek. And I'm sure you're right. They probably have given him a great amount of grief in terms of where he's from. And I'll leave it at that. Another offensive lineman, Robert Mitchell, redshirt senior, North Carolina Central, as Millsboro, Delaware, to kind of round out those members that were on the first team offense. That is 5 players. And before we turn around and get to Jackson State in the defensive side, let me go to you, Drew. What are your thoughts when you talk about the accumulation number of talent that you see on the first team? Does that resonate with you going into a bowl game, championship type game for you?
Well, for me, I like to look at first teamers in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, because when it's all said and done, that's where the game is really won. Skill players are skill players. I mean, you could go out and get you 4 or 5s. You could go out and get you somebody who can catch the ball, somebody who can tackle. The thing that tends to separate all of these HBCUs and championship level HBCUs is the front 5 on offense and those who play in the box on defense, whether you run a 4 front or a 3 front. Those are the ones who tend to separate it, because I don't care how much of a 4 or 5 you got. I don't care if you can throw that ball 60 yards flat-footed. If you ain't got nobody to protect you, the ball is gonna never get there. And on the flip side, if you got the best cornerbacks in the world and that defensive line is now putting pressure on the opposing quarterback, I'm sorry. They can be the best cover corners in the world, but they will constantly get beat because they can't hold. You ask them to do it for three seconds. That extra second is the difference between that extra yard that gives them that separation, where the 4 or 5 on the other side catches the ball for the touchdown. So those are the ones I really want to elect. Those first and those second teamers in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers. Those are the ones who make difference, especially the way that the MEAC has dominated this series for the 6 times that it's been played.
BJ Jones, I'm coming to you in regards to this first team. Tell me a little bit about, as you watch North Carolina Central offensively, what impresses you the most?
Oh, it starts with number 11, Davius Richard. Josh has been talking about this young man. I've gone back the last 2 days, watched North Carolina Central and Morgan State, went back and watched North Carolina Central, South Carolina State. Man, he's special. And it's a difference when you have a quarterback that lifts with the linebackers and the defensive line. And Mike is, by Trey Oliver's account, is probably the strongest man on the football team.
Wow.
When he starts to run the ball in the second half, you see defenders making they make a career decision. They're not as eager to tackle number 11 as they were in the first half. And the thing that gets you about Davis Richard, if he couldn't run, he's the man in the pocket. He has an arm. He can make every throw. He made a throw that was a 3rd and 8 against Morgan State. Well, he put one on the sideline and he dropped it in the bucket. There ain't a lot of quarterbacks can make that throw. And the killer part about it, he made the throw rolling out. He is definitely special. The collection of backs that North Carolina Central have all bring something different to the table. And you don't know from game to game which one of those guys are going to get off. And that center up front, he has had a dominating year. There were some touchdown runs they had where he basically took either the nose guard or the tackle, and oftentimes the linebacker. And when the play was over, they were back there by the safety. Like, he's had a dominant year. And the thing about North Carolina Central that people are really, really going to really pay attention to quick is how physical they are. Not just defensively, but offensively as well.
Joshua Sims, I know you really talked to us about Davis Richard. You know, you've told us many of the things that we need to understand what makes him special. You even got a chance to share about your running back, Latrell Collier from North Carolina Central, when I say yours. But I want to get in a little bit about this offensive line, particularly those on the first team. I want to give them a little shine. Center, Simpkins, the offensive lineman, Bullock, as well as Mitchell. Talk a little bit about what makes them good. Obviously, B.J. Jones talked about the physicality of those offensive linemen. If you would go in a little more and tell us why we need to understand these particular guys as first teamers, but that offensive line in general.
Yeah, we the North Carolina Central brand of football under head coach Trey Oliver is almost a renaissance back to what it used to be in the 90s when we played Division II football. And nobody understands this better than probably Trey Oliver, you know, having played on the team in the 90s. And where it started and ended for those 90s football teams that were in North Carolina Central is that offensive line just wanted to punch you in the mouth and see if you was going to respond. And even if you did respond, they were going to continue to metaphorically punch you in the mouth for 4 quarters to see if you would fold. And so when you look at this offensive line is very resident of our head football coach. You know, whether it's Simpkins or it's Mitchell or it's Bullock, I've seen these young brothers develop. And this offseason, I talked about that. I talked about that as much as I talked about Davius Richard being, you know, and all of the accolades that he was bringing back this season. That offensive line for me was the point at which I said there was not going to be any team inside of the MEAC that would be able to play with us. For those of you who did not get a chance to watch that South Carolina State game, the offensive line absolutely dominated that South Carolina State game. You know, we made mistakes at the skill position. A.D. Drew just talked about we can go grab skill position guys from just about anywhere you can. It was the skill guys that made mistakes. It was you know a little bit of the play calling in certain situations that caused us to lose that game. But one thing that we know for a fact this entire season that has been the most consistent part of North Carolina Central football has been that offensive line. Man, Robert Mitchell, man, is an absolute dog. It's not a coincidence that this young fella was named offensive lineman of the year. It's because of how dominant he's been in the trenches. And one of the things that people have to also kind of recognize about Central, and if you paid attention to the season, is slowly but surely we've rolled in some depth. Some of our young guys that normally probably wouldn't play, as we were getting up on teams like Morgan State by 20 some odd points. Yeah, I'm taking a shot, Morgan. About 20 some odd points. Some of these young guys, we put them in the game, let them get some experience. As we were beating the brakes off of Howard, some of our young guys got in the game, got some experience. As we were beating the brakes off of Norfolk State, some of our young guys got in, got some experience. And that is where we as a program have decided that we're going to become best. And so when you see this game, it's going to ultimately be a battle of what's going to happen in the trenches. A defensive unit that is used to basically having its way against most of the teams in their conference, and an offensive line unit that is used to basically having its way against most defensive units. And so it's going to be a chess match to see whose will is willing to be imposed. And what we've seen is if you got a good enough offensive line, you can find a way to win some ball games.
Good points. Just to cover it, first team defense, we've talked about this in terms of the defensive player of the year, Khalil Baker, defensive back from Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Hey.
You also had the place kicker, Adrian Olivo, Plant City, Florida, a junior on there. In terms of second team offense, you had E.J. Hicks, a wide receiver, redshirt senior from North Carolina Central. Roseville, North Carolina, wide receiver Devin Smith, sophomore, North Carolina Central from Durham, North Carolina. These individuals were actually tied while you have three individuals on the second team in terms of wide receiver that you don't necessarily see. Second team defense lets you know just how deep this goes. Defensive lineman Jaden Taylor, a redshirt sophomore from North Carolina Central, Durham, North Carolina. Defensive lineman Kobe Warrior, redshirt senior from North Carolina Central, Fayetteville, Georgia, as well as linebacker Jackie Rivard, sophomore from North Carolina Central, Durham, North Carolina. We got a defensive back from North Carolina Central, also on the second team defense, Manny Smith, redshirt junior from Laurel Hill, North Carolina. And that is the list in terms of your first and second team. Stick with us on the other side. We'll come back and we'll look at that first and second team from Jackson State's perspective and give you some insight in terms of what makes that team special. Stick with us throughout the week. Obviously, Tuesday we'll do our show. Thursday, I will be in Atlanta, so we'll do a live show there at that time. We're working on seeing where we'll do the show at in terms of whether we'll have a position of folks that can come out in Atlanta that wants to see the show. We'll see if we can do that. If not, we'll certainly bring it to you live, so you'll get to see it regardless. On Friday, we'll do a live remote. We'll have many of these team members that are able to get there. They'll come on, and so we'll take a deeper dive in some of these defensive side of the first team and offense and defense of the second team in North Carolina Central. We'll be able to take a deeper dive then, and we'll do the same thing for Jackson State. So look for insight and coverage all week with this group here, particularly on this show. We're going to give you a lot of the information. Follow the normal shows here as we talk about B.J. Jones, HBCU, his Top 5 Tuesday, as he'll bring it to you like he always does on Twitter. We told you about HBCU Nightly, where they moved to Saturday. So look for them next Saturday. So it'll be a recap in terms of what you'll hear the next time you'll see Joshua Sims from his Twitter Spaces account with the group there that does a great job. But you got AD Drew. Make sure you check them out tonight. They'll have a long episode to really break down many things that we don't get done here. You have your general team, O&G Strike Zone, that I'm sure that they'll get into a little bit of this. Go back and check out Carlos as he brings it to you in terms of Saturday. I'm sure he'll have a breakdown on the show. We'll see if he'll move that show because it corresponds usually with the time of the game. So I don't know if they'll do a live remote talking about the game or if they'll move the time of that show. But those are some of the folks that will continue to get it done and just want to give you an update. Stick with us. We'll be right back on the other side where we'll break down those first teamers. And we'll start with the defense from Jackson State that's up against that offense that we just talked about there. We'll give you the rest of the first and second teamers from the SWAC perspective because we're going to give you some highlights on the players in terms of those that will be in the action that will get us all excited and pumped up about this Celebration Bowl in Atlanta and that's the Cricket Wireless Celebration Bowl, with the kickoff at noon for those in the Central Time Zone. There, I should say 11 o'clock Central Time Zone, 12 noon Eastern Time. So it'll be fascinating to see as all the media come back and give you a breakdown on what takes place. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Thank you guys for what you do for HBCU athletics. This is a fantastic avenue for all of us. This is our ESPN, so we love what you guys do. Brian, AD, Roy, all you guys at BCSN. We really appreciate what it is that you guys do for us.
We'll be there soon.
We? Is this the one?
Well, let's say I found the one who takes me to another level. Always stays calm under pressure. Most importantly, the one that helps me discover the coolest places.
This sounds wonderful.
Come outside, I'll introduce you. They're here. Definitely the one.
Introducing the all-new Nissan Frontier.
At CDW, we get speed as the new currency of success.
Our team spends way too much time tending to outdated applications and software when they should be focused on driving application agility and innovation.
CDW Amplify Development Services modernizes software and application development to help accelerate innovation and digital transformation.
So you mean building new applications, UI, and mobile interfaces?
Well, you said you needed to innovate more quickly.
Oh, so he's a listener.
To do more at scale, trust CDW Amplify Development Services.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Press the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna law, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. Again, they're out on assignment, so we have none other than BJ Jones, AD Drew. Joshua Sims Sr. will be right back with us. As we talked about the superlatives of those offensive players of the year, which included our offensive lineman of the year that we mentioned in terms of first team that we broke down for North Carolina Central. Robert Mitchell, just to let you know how nice he is. Obviously, we talked about the coach of the year, Trey Oliver. Let's get back in and give you a breakdown of what that looked like on the SWAC side of those announcements. As you imagine, first and second team players of the year were literally littered with Jackson State players. And we're going to focus on that, guys, because they're in the Celebration Bowl. Defensive player of the year, as you know, was Aubrey Miller Jr. We highlighted him last week. Shador Sanders with Jackson State. You had the freshman of the year, Kevin Coleman Jr. from Jackson State, wide receiver that was part of that top 50 recruiting class that included, obviously, the number one recruit in the country. And then coach of the year was Deion Sanders. I wanted to focus on this first team. Obviously, we talked about North Carolina Central offensively. We gave you everybody. So we're going to focus a little more on defense, first team, and give you those from Jackson that you need to consider as you get into this. Defensive lineman, you have Niles Gaddy from Jackson State. Obviously, linebacker Aubrey Miller Jr. from Jackson State. Defensive back, Cameron Simmons Craig are your defensive players in there. So I'm going to start with you, BJ Jones, to talk about this defensive unit and what they get done in so many ways. Let me know your thoughts in terms of what is going on there.
Oh, man, defensively, Jackson State applies a lot of pressure. Niles Gaddy, we talked about him being on the first team, man. He's an imposing figure, standing at 6'6". It is very difficult if you think you're going to throw the slant game with 6'6" coming off the defensive end. And he's probably the most improved player from last year. One of the feedback, some of the feedback I got from scouts coming into the year, that he was kind of stiff, and that kind of was hurting his evaluation. But he's kind of improved that. Very improved player. Transfer, I think he's only going to get better. To me, the straw that stirs the drink defensively for Jackson State is Cameron Stillman, number 7 back there. He makes play after play after play after play after play. Very special. I know that Aubrey Miller will get a lot of the attention, but Silman Craig, whether it's through the air, supporting the run, he is the drink that stirs that Jackson State defensive drink. And then you talk about Aubrey Miller, man. What he's able to do is bang. He's a force on the inside. He makes sure tackles. He doesn't miss a lot of tackles. SWAC Defensive Player of the Year, as you guys just said. Defensively, this unit, quite frankly, the best in FCS football. When you look at the yardage they give up, points per game that they give up, had an anomaly last week against Southern when they gave up 24 points, and the amount of yardage they gave up was season high as far as points and yardage.
Right.
But consistently throughout the year, this defense has been this defense is the reason that this team is in this ball game. Make no mistakes about it. And it's just the work that Coach Hart and Coach Zimmer and can't forget Dennis Thurman, they've done on that side of the football 2 years in a row.
Man, that's really good information when you break down. And like you said, Dennis Thurman, the way he is so aggressive in terms of attacking the offensive at the FCS level, understanding that is a lot for an offense to take down, and more times than not, in terms of just what it takes to consistently beat that, he'll take his chances. With that, I want to go to you, Drew. Same framework in terms of that defensive players. What are your thoughts? And I imagine you like to focus on the defensive line, like you talked about the offensive line. And I think you put a little bit of that in there in terms of the defense. Talk a little bit about Jackson State defensive line as it's led, at least by the first teamer, Niles Gaddy, Also, in terms of that second team defense, some other players, Ferguson on that defensive line is Justin Reagan. That's alongside and at times plays alongside Gaddy in terms of what gets done there. So tell us a little more in terms of your thought about this defensive line, and now you get a chance going up against the offensive line that you talked about earlier. Break that down for us, and what particular things are you looking for in that matchup that's going to give you indication of who will have the advantage throughout that game?
What makes this Jackson State defense special is their ability to stop the run and to make teams one-dimensional. They go through, they stop the run early, along with their offense being able to put up some quick early points. And teams have this thing when they feel like they get down by more than one score against Jackson State, they need to panic and they need to go outside of their character and sit back and try to throw the ball. Well, when you sit back and try to throw the ball against this Jackson State defense, that's what Coach DT wants, Dennis Thurman. He wants you to sit back and try to throw the ball all day so he can come with those exotic blitzes that he likes to do. Once he gets to the point where he can blitz you, leave those corners out there in cover zero situations, and just come out and put more pressure on you. More pressure he puts on you, the more turnovers this defense causes. Well, what I'm going to be interested to see is I haven't seen Jackson State face a team thus far this year that seems to be as committed to the run game as Central is. Throw in the fact that you have an extra running back there who will have the ball in his hands at all times, that being Darius Richard. So not only are they going to have to be committed to stopping the running backs from Central, they're also going to have to stop the extra running back, being the quarterback, who may be, honestly, the best runner on that Central team. So that's what the chess match is going to be. Will Central keep themselves in position where Jackson State cannot come with the blitzes? If they can do that and keep themselves out of and long situations, second and long, third and long situations, we're going to have a very interesting game. And I'm going to say this. We may wind up having another one of them shootouts like we had 2 years ago with A&T and Alcorn put up 100 points between them. No one expected that with those two defenses, but those two offenses countered those two defenses exactly how they had to do, and we had a basketball score in the Mercedes-Benz stadium. So that's what I'm really trying to see. I'm really thinking that we may wind up having a basketball score out here.
That would be fascinating because I think most people coming here thinking it's going to be more defensive oriented, but that's why the game is played. So that you got a chance to put that little nugget out there. It'll be fascinating to see if that part of it comes through because one of the things we continue to shout out, you said we go as far back in terms of opening up this season about what you said would happen to the West Division in terms of 3 losses. We'll win it and teams tied up. Yeah, you were right on the money. So I'll be interested.
I'm looking to have some whiplash watching that ball go back and forth.
Exactly. With that being said, Joshua Sims, similar question. Looking at this first team defense of Jackson State, as well as second team in terms of these defensive people on here. We talked about defensive lineman Niles Gaddy in terms of what he brings to the table. Defensive back Cameron Silman Craig. I'm interested in those kind of matchups in terms of what that looks like against those wide receivers that are second teamers from North Carolina Central, obviously, in terms of where that may go up. When you look at Jackson State, obviously the second team, as you have Justin Reagan lining up with Niles Gaddy, getting it done in so many different ways. We already talked about the linebacker core of Jackson State. Talk about Jackson State from a defensive perspective. And if you would maybe get into a little bit of Hunter and what they do from a defensive in those wide receivers. Are they going to be some man on man, or you see the chance that offensively maybe Central will not allow as much as you can to try to do the man on man as they'll move their wide receivers in different positions. But we talked about the key plays between these wide receivers, but I want you to get in a little bit of talk more on the Jackson State side of what that looks like them in terms of what you see them wanting to come in this game and play from a defensive perspective, particularly when you look at the safeties and the defensive back.
Yeah, defense coordinator Dennis Sturman really believes that he can crowd the box and match up man to man against teams because he knows he has the athletes, man. And then these guys are physical; they're gonna put their hands on you. When they do go zone, it's matchup zone. It's very interesting to see because I haven't seen the defense really be called that way. Through the HBCU ranks in a long time. A lot of what I've done is kind of sit back from, watch the game from an offensive coordinator's perspective and say, like, what would I do against this? What type of calls worked against this? A lot of meshes, a lot of pick routes, inside dig, sit routes, things where you got to try to get to a spot before they can get to a spot, rub routes, things of that sort that can be able to work. But to the credit of that defense, man, they don't really allow for you to get into the spot where you can take advantages of those, rubs and off routes and things of that sort. You have to be in certain scenarios and situations to run those routes, mesh, different things like that. You got to be in scenario down and distance that makes it make sense. Southern last weekend, they use a lot of inside slant routes, quick routes that allow the quarterback to get the ball out of his hand and beat a guy to a spot. So this defense is nasty. It's very opportunistic. You make a mistake, they gonna capitalize on it. And you talked about Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter, very similarly, in this defense, in this style of defense, is almost perfect because Travis Hunter has always poised himself. When he was in high school, he's always kind of painted himself to be a man-to-man style corner. He wants to be put on the island one-on-one with your best receiver, and he wants to see can he take that away. One of the things that I found to be a little interesting now is, we saw a little bit of something in that SWAC championship as it pertains to Travis Hunter. And I ain't going to talk too much because I know Chuck ain't on here and I can't tell Chuck what I saw. But I will say that our analysts at North Carolina Central, they saw it too. And it's on the board. So, but to that point, man, Travis is an absolute ball player, man. This kid, wherever he is, you better have your eyes on and circle wherever he is on the field. This defense is incredible, and their defense starts in that front seven. That defensive line's ability to get up the field and make plays and let those DBs play in space and make plays on the backside is what makes this defense special.
And to your point, Hunter was injured in that game. Obviously, 2 weeks. So hopefully it was a type of injury that he can come back. And so the question is he going to be able to play? And so we'll see what that looks like as the week comes up, because I'm sure that question will be asked. And we'll see if we get any information on it. Obviously, in championship games, oftentimes coaches are extremely coy. We understand it, but it's our obligation to at least ask the questions. And we'll see, even if it's a game time decision. But with that, it's not like Hunter had time out throughout the season. So this team is also prepared to play without him. And so if you're talking about from Jackson State perspective, that would be at least a good thing that they are not, have not been in this scenario before. Before I let you go on this show, as we kind of up against the time, man, we could go in so many different directions. Make sure you check us out on Tuesday as we'll get into offense and defense in terms of these coordinators to really give you some insight. We have that ability and that information coming up this week. So check us out on Tuesday as we go there. And then as we told you about the rest of the week, we'll get these stalwarts back to make sure you can get all the inside information you get to see who is going to get the T-shirt that says Celebration Bowl champion. In this case, essentially whoever wins this will be the Black College national champion, certainly at the major division level for us. And we do it here. We separate it from the mid-majors.
Won't be disputed this year.
Some people have the combination code poll. So you might have some people picking Benedict overall. I doubt that in that case, and I think there could be an argument for that. But talking about what we do here, obviously what we do with HBCU Pro Sports Media, we separate the polls in terms of the mid-major division and major division. Mid-major division, we've already capped that and crowned Benedict College in terms of that, and had a chance to talk to the great coach over there to acknowledge what he done this season in terms of that work there. What I did want to close on the show and just kind of go to each one of you, and I want you to answer this from both sides, North Carolina Central, Jackson State. What does North Carolina Central have to do to come out victorious in this matchup? At the same time, what does Jackson State have to do to come out victorious in this matchup? Starting with you, AD Drew, what are your thoughts? What would you say the one thing that Jackson State has to do to get this victory, and what is the one thing that Central has to do to get this victory?
But Jackson State it has nothing to do with physical, has nothing to do with X's and O's. They have to keep this us against the world mentality with all the outside distractions and detractors going on. If they can stay singularly focused, if that coaching staff, even though some of them have the feet out the door and are making moving arrangements, if they can stay focused on this task and completing this task, Jackson State can be victorious. So that's what it's going to take for Jackson State's point of view. From the Central point of view, no turnovers. It's that simple. Central cannot afford to turn the ball over, and they need to get an extra possession or two against Jackson State. We've seen some chinks in the Jackson State arm when it comes to special teams with the punt game and field goals. Now, you don't want to kick the ball at Jackson State because we know what they do when you kick the ball to them. But on the flip side, we've seen some problems with that. So if they could gain an extra possession or two right there, a shank punt, a missed field goal, or a turnover, and equate those into points. And speaking of points, Central has got to score touchdowns. They cannot score field goals against Jackson State. Then Central can win this game.
I agree with you on the punts. They've been pretty money on the field goals. Last year they had major problems. But this year they got a freshman coming in here. He's been really lights out in terms of field goals. And because of that, I thought they've done a better job of not forcing the action and taking field goals that they didn't take last year. So overall, I do agree with your points. Great points when you talk about one, being on the field for Central, and one, in a lot of ways, being off the field for Jackson State. Great analysis there. Let me go to you, Josh Senior, to talk about your perspective. Same question. Jackson State, what do they have to do? Central, what do they have to do to come out victorious next Saturday to hold up the trophy for the Celebration Bowl?
Yeah, if I'm Jackson State, man, in this game, I'm actually going the opposite of Drew, man. Don't make any mistakes. If you've watched North Carolina Central this season, when teams make mistakes, we capitalize. You do not have what you would normally have on a Saturday in the SWAC in this game. You cannot afford to make any mistakes against this North Carolina Central defense. If you do, we are the most opportunistic offense and defense that you will face ever. And the second just kind of small point is, hopefully you've learned from your mistakes from last year. It's not seeming like it. Coming into this game, not focused, a lot of distractions, a lot of things. Football is still the way it was, it's been played for a long time, is when you limit the distractions, you limit the mistakes, you find ways to win games. But if you're North Carolina Central, let me look into this camera. If you are North Carolina Central University, play our game. It is a physical, punch you in your mouth, see if you're going to respond, Mike Tyson style of football. And if they can't respond, keep punching them in the mouth until it's all zeros on the clock, and you will be victorious. We don't have to change nothing. We don't got to do nothing special. We don't have to try to pull out no trick. We don't even do that. Be us, do us, and you'll see that we were the better team from the start anyway. That's all I got to say.
Nice, nice. Sounds like he is giving the pregame speech over there at North Carolina Central Eagles. With that being said, taking off his analyst hat a little bit for a while and going into the Eagles fandom. That's fine. We do that here. But that's why I made sure we close with BJ Jones and open with AD Drew, because I knew he was going to sneak that in there after he did the reference. So nice. Before he closed, he had the sling song.
Put another piece of bread on the sandwich, BJ.
Charles is not here, so we'll make sure Charles get the play back, and we'll bring Charles on Tuesday.
End with some balance. We're going to end with some balance with BJ,
Make sure he gets a chance to retort. But with that being said, BJ Jones, I did want to get your perspective in terms of those questions there. What does Jackson State have to do to get this victory, and what does Central have to do to get this victory on Saturday?
What Jackson State has to do, they can't have these periods where they kind of check out of the game. You saw it against Alcorn, you saw it against Alabama A&M, you saw it against Southern. They cannot have these periods, because if you have one of those during this game, ain't no coming back. There's no coming back. And then if you're Jackson State, quite frankly, you have to keep Shedeur Sanders upright, and he has to make plays when the plays are there. Don't force anything, just make the plays out of there. If you're North Carolina Central, we'll start with two things. Stop the run. Savion Wilkerson, we cannot be calling his name. Get Shedeur Sanders uncomfortable. He is a completely different quarterback once you hit him and he's uncomfortable. Also, looking at the Celebration Bowl last year, the big difference in that game, South Carolina State was physical from the jump, and you saw in the second half, Jackson State guys looking up at the clock like, man, how much time we got left? They were ready to get out of there last year. They had been hitting the mouth so hard. You saw when they went back to the sideline, Auburn Miller literally had blood coming out of his mouth. They were literally hitting him that hard, and he was not Auburn Miller that you've been seeing this week. When the bully is accustomed to being a bully, and you hit him in the mouth and you keep doing it, They kind of check out. South Carolina State put that blueprint out. North Carolina Central has the athletes to be able to do it. We'll just see if they'll be able to do it on Saturday.
Great points by all. G. Boone Holly sneaks in there and has the question of the day. Is Charles Bishop in Colorado like his buddy Neely was? I can tell you all, I have seen Charles Bishop, and I know, no, he is not in Colorado. Actually, in all seriousness, we'll say a quick prayer for Bishop. He's not feeling well, and so he's trying to rest up to make sure that he can make the trip this weekend. So he's just recovering, and I told him, go ahead and sit this one out. Take some downtime to make sure that he's well in doing that. But no, he did not go to Colorado with Neely. You didn't see him on the camera. That's why, because he was here in Houston. But great questions. Again, see, we can do that in the government structure because we can have fun with each other and talk noise. It's when the social structure gets in the way oftentimes that we lose our way. With that being said, thank you all of y'all. Great information. Like I said, we'll look forward to this week and find a way to make sure you get on with the group so we can all continue to break down this game. We got some final points that we need to do, and obviously we'll have our final scores in terms of who picks who. We'll kind of save that and stretch that out. We'll find a way to get that to you, whether we record it to get these folks back on camera to do it live. I didn't want to do it this early because a lot of things that happen. We're still looking at news. We got some time to do that as we will give you the lead coverage on Black College Sports, downloading JBN, my BCSN, following all the shows. You'll get your latest updates in terms of what to expect as you get into Atlanta, or if you can't get there, you tuning in. We'll break down all aspects of this game, from the business side to the cultural side, to the mental side, obviously the physical side, what's on the ground in terms of the players, all-stars, who to keep your eyes on. We'll give you the framework also in terms of what that looks like in terms of those calling and making plays. With that being said, thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and family. I am Dr. Kenyatta, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the college HBCU Sports with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. Again, we want to thank you for listening to Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. We look forward to next week as we discuss the latest news in the lab. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattaCavil. Obviously, make sure you follow AD Drew. They'll be on tonight with Brian and AD. I can't wait to see where they go. Might have a surprise guest. Looks like they'll be reaching out John Grant to give you some insight, the latest of what's going on there. We had them on Thursday, so you can go see what that was like. Before that, on Tuesday, we had Jay Walker to give us some insight in terms of the game analysis. Obviously, tune in to BJ Jones on Tuesday as they get into HBCU top 5 news, what's going on there. And follow him on Twitter because he is wonderful in terms of how he provides jewels here and there and checks people when they get out of line, frankly, to tell you that. Joshua Sims Sr., he's right then, masterful in the way he does it as well. So make sure, again, you check them out. No HBCU Nightly on Wednesday this week. Never know, things come up, so just keep an eye on it. Something might dictate the need to do it, if not on Wednesday, the latter part. But he certainly will be there on Saturday night to make sure you get your first update in terms of the post game. Everybody's thoughts in terms of what that looks like. AD Drew continues to give it to you and give you all the information and stands in the gap for what we do. Again, we're working on, last year we were able to give you a Sunday show to kind of close things out. I'll actually be in the air. So if we do it, it might come later. We'll continue to give you that information to give you updates there. I'll be headed to Las Vegas to make sure you can get the latest and most update news as we go from one sport to the next sport. We go from football to officially closing things out in terms of the season with the Celebration Bowl. Then we have the Chris Paul Basketball Classic with North Carolina A&T, Texas Southern University, Norfolk State, and Hampton playing in that game. I'll get the chance to see the second series of games there live on Sunday, so I'll be in Las Vegas. First games are played later, and we'll watch those on television to give you updates there after the Celebration Bowl as they'll be played Saturday. So just giving you a lay of the land for this week, a lot going on. We'll be here. With that being said, dream big, continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Drew?
Course.
Sims?
Lecture.
Jones?
Dismissed.
Good holler, y'all.
Money, great job.